She told them the others don't count, that this baby is the one that matters now. The words echoed inside the courtroom like a damnation. Amara, the unsuspecting fifth wife, Kody had wedded in secret, sat erect and smug, holding the baby in her arms. The wives gaped, mouths clamped, hearts plunging. Christine's hands shook. Janelle shook her head. Even Robyn's eyes brimmed with tears. Kody refused to glance at them. He couldn't. His gaze was centered solely on the baby, the one Amara referred to as the true heir of the Brown name. The family had battled for years about houses, property, love and respect. But this was something else. This was not about property anymore. This was about legacy, and who would own the future. Amara's voice was firm, icy, unshakable. This child is his blood. This child will inherit everything, and none of you will take him from me. Christine had risen halfway out of her seat before the judge's gavel came down. The strain snapped for an instant, then the wives understood it. The war had just begun. The courtroom had witnessed custody battles before, but never one such. Not with DNA results pending in sealed envelopes. Not with rumors of forged documents. Not with older children set to take the stand and affirm their own father had disowned them from his will. And as the judge asked for order, all eyes fixed on the single question that would determine it all. Was this baby really Kody Brown's lineage? Or had the prophetess of legacy founded her dynasty on a fabrication? Kody himself had always maintained that life was about legacy. For years he had portrayed himself as the father of a family of unique composition, a man who would put his stamp on the world through children, wives and spirituality. But secretly, he dreaded something that none of his children would bear his name, his values, his empire to the next generation. That is why he was vulnerable when Amara came along. They met at a Phoenix community event. She was not from their church, not from his past circles. She was different, younger, quick-witted, with eyes that made him feel noticed, even adored. She referred to him as a man chosen to leave a dynasty. Kody drank in the words. He had not been referred to as chosen in years. Not Christine, not Janelle, not Meri, not Robyn. Amara talked of legacy the way other people talked of love. She said, God created men to build heirs, not children. She said the Brown name was too scattered, too watered down, and that one good heir was needed to revive its power. You have sons, you have daughters, Kody explained. She shook her head. But no heir, not a single child who is yours alone, free from their mother's doubts, free from their rebellion. I can give you that. I can give you your bloodline. These words struck him more forcibly than any sermon. For the first time in years, he felt like he had purpose again. The other wives had no idea. They believed he was just having another affair, another reason to flee the weak walls of his polygamous marriage. But weeks later, he brought Amara to Flagstaff. She didn't request permission. She didn't ask for their approval. She stood in the living room, her hands gently resting on Kody's arm and said, I will bear his heir. And nothing you can say will stop me. Christine blew up first. You think you can come in here and wipe out 18 children? Janelle was more subdued but stinging. Legacy is not about blood, Kody. Legacy is about love. And you've lost it. But Kody didn't hear them. Amara's hand was already in his, sighing they don't see. But you do. This is bigger than them. Weeks went by, and the news broke out. Amara was with child. Kody announced it triumphantly, as if he had spent his entire life waiting for this moment. TLC cameras recorded his radiant grin, but the wives resembled specters standing behind him. The rest of the children ceased making calls. Even Robyn, who had stood by him most strongly as a defender, felt estranged. Nevertheless, Kody persisted. Amara urged it. She made him sign papers, just in case something ever occurred, granting her and him shared rights to property and inheritance. He signed them without hesitation. This is for the future, Amara told him. For our heir? The wives murmured among themselves but could not intervene. He was already too far gone. 9 months passed, and the baby was born. A boy? Amara had named him Solomon Elijah Brown. Kody had addressed him as the future of the Brown family. But Amara's smile that day was more than the smile of a new mom. It was the smile of a woman who had received precisely what she had desired. And beneath that smile, a scheme was already underway. Because, just weeks after that, she had served her initial crop of court documents, not for joint custody, not for support, for sole custody, and full rights to his inheritance. The documents came on a Tuesday morning. Christine was drinking coffee when she received the call. She thought it was some error, another rumor about Kody, another trash magazine story she could dismiss. But when her attorney emailed the papers, she felt a pit in her stomach. Amara Brown versus Kody Brown, petition for sole custody and inheritance rights. Christine stood stock still, rereading the lines over and over. Amara wasn't petitioning for custody of her baby boy. She was seeking it all. All assets, all financial connections, all rights to the Brown family trust, all flowing to her and her child. Christine called Janelle. She could hardly speak. Janelle. She petitioned for custody, sole custody. She's shutting out the others. Janelle didn't even sound surprised. I knew it. I knew she wasn't here just for love. She wanted power. Legacy. Hours later, Meri and Robyn had copies as well. Robyn's voice broke when she returned Christine's call. She's attempting to erase my children, she breathed. She once told me, the future doesn't need stepchildren. I didn't realize she meant that. By the time they met in Christine's kitchen, the anger was boiling. She used him, Janelle spat. She gave him a baby, and now she thinks she owns the name. She doesn't think it, Christine said bitterly. She knows it. Kody signed papers. I've seen them, inheritance transfers, parental rights, all with his signature. Meri slapped her hand against the table. So he just erased us? Erased 18 children for the sake of one baby? Robyn's tears flowed. He erased himself. The wives were together for the first time in years. Whatever passed, whatever resentments remained, that didn't matter anymore. The battle was larger than they were now. It was about defending their children from being erased from existence. The first court hearing came quicker than expected. The courtroom was charged with emotion. Amara entered in a sleek black dress, chin high, the baby clutched against her chest like a prize. Kody trailed behind her, his gaze fixed only on the child, as if all other people in the room did not matter. Christine could not resist. She spat softly at Janelle. Look at him. He's not a father. He's a shadow. The judge banged the courtroom into order. Amara's attorney didn't hesitate. Your client has presented proof that she, and she alone, can provide a stable, moral home for the child. The other interested parties, the ex-wives, have exhibited hostility and resentment, a poisonous environment inappropriate for an heir. Christine nearly stood from her seat. Former wives, she hissed. He are the mothers of his children. But it was only the beginning. Amara's lawyer held up documents Kody had signed, legal transfers of inheritance rights, trust modifications, even parental consent forms, giving her primary authority over the newborn. The courtroom murmured, even the judge raised an eyebrow. Kody sat frozen. He didn't deny signing them. He didn't defend himself. And then Amara spoke. Quiet, cold, calculated. This is not about erasing anyone, she said gently. This is about protecting what is pure. 18 children cannot bear one name. They are broken, divided, scattered. But this child, my son, he is the future. He is the one who will bear the Brown name. And I will defend him with everything I am. Christine's voice broke. And what about the others? What about the children who already are? Amara spun around, eyes unwavering. They are not mine. They are not worthy. And the wives gasped. Even the judge looked uncomfortable. And that was when the battle lines were drawn. On one side, Amara with Kody standing silently behind her, blinded by the vision of legacy. On the other hand, Christine, Janelle, Meri, and Robyn, finally together, resolved to defend the children Amara had already discarded. The courthouse had experienced divorce. It had experienced polygamy challenge, but never had it witnessed a single woman try to take an entire family's future by way of a single child. The judge leaned in. This case is not about legacy. This is about law. And the law will determine who this child is. Not prophecy, not pride. But at the close of the session, a sealed envelope appeared on the judge's bench. In it were the findings of the first DNA test. And when he opened it next session, everything would be different. The courtroom was quiet when the judge opened the sealed envelope. It was heavier than paper. He gripped it as if it held the future. This court has received DNA verification of the paternity of the minor child, the judge announced. These findings will be entered into the record. Christine's breath caught. Janelle grasped her arm. Robyn prayed a quiet prayer under her breath. Meri sat straight ahead, her expression unreadable. Kody moved in his seat, his gaze fixed on Amara. She didn't blink. She smiled, cradling the baby in her arms, like she already knew what was going to be in that envelope. The judge unfolded the paper. He read it. His eyes flashed with something shock, perhaps discomfort, but his tone stayed even. The test verifies with 99.9% certainty that Kody Brown is the biological father of the child. A collective gasp filled the room. Christine closed her eyes, her hands shaking. Janelle's jaw clenched. Meri shook her head slowly. Robyn snarled, "So it's true." Amara's smile broadened. She leaned forward towards Kody and whispered loudly enough for the wives to hear. "See, he is the heir." But the judge wasn't done. "This does not settle the matter of custody," he stated firmly, "and it certainly does not determine inheritance rights." Christine rose, not able to hold back. "Your Honor, it has nothing to do with biology. This is about control. She's brainwashed him. She's holding that child hostage to eliminate every other son and daughter he's ever had." Amara wheeled around, her tone still cool, slicing through the room like ice. "Your children are fractured. They rebel, fight, leave him. This one, my son, he won't. He is chosen." Janelle rose next, her voice sharper. "Chosen? He's a baby. He doesn't even know his own name yet. And you're already using him as a weapon." The judge slammed his gavel. "Order." But the damage was done. The wives weren't just fighting for their children anymore. They were fighting for their very existence. Kody finally broke his silence. His voice was low, near broken. "This is what I've always dreamed of. One child that would bear the Brown name without the constant rejection, the constant leaving." Christine turned her head to him. "Rejection? Kody? They didn't leave you. You pushed them away. And now you want to wipe them out to mend your pride?" Kody did not respond. He couldn't. And then something strange occurred. The court summoned its next witness, a child. Not the infant, but Gabriel, Janelle's son. Older now, tall, but his eyes bore years of disillusionment. He moved slowly to the stand, his voice soft but firm. "My dad tells me we don't exist anymore, that this baby is his future. But I'm his son too. And if this court makes him forget that, then it's not just about one baby. It's about all of us being erased." The room plunged into a thick silence. Even the judge flinched. Gabriel's voice trembled. "We're not mistakes. We're his children." Christine covered her mouth. Janelle cried silently. Even Robyn sobbed, tears flowing freely. Amara's smile failed her for the first time, but the fire in her eyes never left. She leaned forward and spit across the courtroom. "Blood speaks louder than tears." The judge ordered recess, but everyone knew it. The war over legacy had just entered something sinister, something profound. This wasn't about custody any longer. It was about identity, about whether the Brown children who had existed before counted for anything. And as the families emerged into the hallway, there were whispers behind them. The question hung in the air. Would the birth of one baby erase the legacy of 18 others? The next session began with Amara's attorney, holding a large folder, stamped in large red letters. "Motion to establish heirship." Gasps circulated around the courtroom as the judge perused the title page. Christine leaned in, narrowing her eyes. Janelle's breath caught. Even Meri, who had remained calm for the majority of the trial, whispered. She wouldn't dare. But Amara dared. Her attorney stood firm. "Your Honor, my client asks that this court officially make her son, Solomon Elijah Brown, the legitimate heir to Mr. Brown's properties, trust funds and any forthcoming royalties associated with the Brown family surname. This comes as a result of Mr. Brown's official signature on documents backdated to give these claims." The room broke out. Christine sprang to her feet. He was tricked. He signed those documents under her coercion. He didn't even know what she was demanding. Amara's attorney did not blink. "The law does not judge the persuasion of a man's heart, but the ink of his hand." He signed. "It is binding." The judge slammed his gavel. "Order." Amara sat quietly, the baby in her arms, her lips pursed in that same unnerving smile. Kody was pale, caught between pride and remorse, his eyes sweeping from the infant to his older children, who sat staring from the bench. Janelle then testified, her tone a knife's edge. "Your Honor, this is not inheritance. This is erasure. She is attempting to erase the names of 18 other children. Children who have lived, loved, and belonged to this family for decades. You cannot let this. Robyn, the normally demure defender of Kody, snapped at last. Her words trembled as she spoke to the court. She said, "My children don't count. That the only blood you have to protect is her own. If you approve this, you're telling every single child in this household they never were born." The judge scowled deeply, ruffling through the document. "And these signatures, Mr. Brown, do you recognize that you signed them?" Kody swallowed hard. I did." Christine gave him a look of dismay. "Kody, how could you?" He hung his head. "I thought it was about building a future. I didn't think." "You never think." Christine's voice trembled. "You just do whatever satisfies your pride. And now you've given her the key to destroy your own kids." The prosecutor stood, at last in charge. "Your Honor, the state contends that these papers are voidable by undue influence. The timeline, the coercion, the fact that he signed them under conditions of isolation from his other wives, all indicate coercion." The judge nodded slowly. "This court will hear the claim. But meanwhile no inheritance rights will be acknowledged until this issue is determined." Amara's smile went out for the first time. She wrapped the baby more tightly to her, murmuring something to him that no one could hear. And then, suddenly, she stood. "You can stall it. You can refuse it. But this child will outlive every one of you. And when the dust settles, he will bear the name. He is the heir, no matter what paper declares." Christine banged her hand on the table. "You don't get to decide that." Amara turned to her, her voice gentle but deadly. "He already has." The judge adjourned the court for recess, but the harm was done. The wives swept out, angry, shaken, indignant. For the first time in years they weren't fighting each other. They were fighting for all of their children. And down the hallway, flashbulbs popped, microphones thrust forward. Journalists yelled questions. Is Amara manipulating Kody? Are the Brown children disappearing? Who is the true heir? Christine elbowed past them, but her voice was heard. "It's not about one child. It's about every child being told that they don't count. And I am not going to let that happen." Back in the house, Kody sat by himself. His son gurgled softly in Amara's arms in the other room. And for the first time, uncertainty crept into his eyes. But it was too late. The battle for blood and heritage had already started. The fifth hearing began with the gallery full. Reporters filled the hallway, fans crowded the courthouse doors, and inside tension hung heavy in the air. All knew that today would be different. Today the children would testify. Christine leaned forward in her chair, hands clutched tightly. Janelle looked directly ahead, lips pursed in concentration. Robyn held Aurora's hand anxiously. Meri, stone-faced, tapped her finger lightly on the table, a silent beat of frustration. Amara walked in last, baby tight against her chest. She did not glance at the wives. She did not glance at the children. She only glanced at the judge. Her eyes were icy, her gait steady, as if she already knew what the verdict would be. The judge started. "This court will now hear testimony from the older Brown children." The first to testify was Gwendolyn, Christine's daughter. She strode confidently, yet her hands were shaking as she took a seat. She looked at her father once, and then never again. "Tell us what you went through," the prosecutor said. Her tone was steady but trembled in spots. "Dad didn't come see us anymore after Amara was born. He said he was busy, but we all knew the truth. He wouldn't answer when we called. When we did run into him, he only spoke of the baby, of the heir." Christine's eyes shut as Gwendolyn went on. "He explained one time that the rest of us had already made our ways, that this baby was unique, because he could begin again, like we weren't even his children anymore." The courtroom gasped. Even the judge was shocked. Kody shifted uncomfortably, staring at the table. The next child was Gabriel. He sat up taller than before, jaw clamped tightly shut. His voice was firm, almost too firm. "She told me I was undeserving, that my father's name wasn't for me, that I was too disobedient, too damaged to bear the Brown name. And my father didn't stand up for me. He just stood there and let her tell me." Janelle's tears streamed silently down her face. The prosecutor said, "Who told you this?" Gabriel didn't flinch. He pointed directly at Amara. "She did." For the first time, Amara's smile faltered. Her eyes narrowed, but she remained silent. And then there was Aurora. She stood with her mother, Robyn, before taking the stand. Her voice trembled with each statement. "She told me to forget about Mom, that Mom's children weren't really Brown kids. Only hers would be counted. She said Dad's destiny was with her. not us. And when I wept, she told me weeping was weakness, and weakness would be wiped out. Aurora shook in her chair as Robyn's cries filled the room. She continued. She made me feel like I didn't exist, and Dad didn't intervene. That's why I fled. The wives held their collective breath as Aurora descended, falling into Robyn's arms. The prosecutor addressed the judge. This testimony exemplifies a behavior pattern of manipulation, alienation, and deliberate emotional harm. Amara's actions transcend ambition. This is abuse. But Amara's attorney held firm. These are not legal, but rather emotional allegations. The fact remains, my client gave birth to the child that carries Mr. Brown's legacy. Inheritance cannot be negated by emotions. Christine sprang up out of her chair, shouting, inheritance is not a matter of one baby. It's a matter of all of them. Every single one of them is entitled to their father, not to be taken away by a woman who desires power. The judge called for order, but the feeling couldn't be repressed. The children's voices remained in the room, unavoidable, undeniable. At last the judge addressed Kody. Mr. Brown, you have heard your children. Do you deny their testimony? The room held its breath. The wives, the children, even Amara. Kody's lips opened, but no sound escaped. His silence spoke volumes more than words ever could. The judge tapped his pen. This is no longer a case of inheritance only. This is a case of the protection of all these children. And it will go on until the truth regarding Amara's motives is fully exposed. But nobody in that room anticipated what came next. A file was handed to the prosecution. Reports extracted from state archives, evidence of Amara's history, her actual name, her record of lawsuits, her background of preying on rich men for their properties. And now the truth would blow its lid. The doors to the courtroom swung open a second time after recess, and whispers hummed through the gallery. Something had changed. The prosecutor had a new folder, thicker than the others, stamped with state records and sealed documents. Christine leaned forward, feeling it. Janelle whispered, "What did they find?" As the judge came back on the bench, the prosecutor rose to his feet. His voice was steady, measured. "Your Honor, this court has been about inheritance, custody, and manipulation. But the reality is deeper. The woman who claims to be Amara Brown is not who she claims to be." Gasps filled the room. Even Kody's head jerked up. Amara's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. The prosecutor raised the file. Her real name is Amara Jane Collins. She has used at least 3 different last names over the past decade. All of them were changes made in conjunction with a different lawsuit. We detected a pattern: marriages, speedy children, divorce disputes, and economic settlements. She has sued or sought inheritance from 2 other men prior to Mr. Brown, both resolved out of court. The wives went rigid. Christine went white in the face. Janelle whispered, "She's done this before." The prosecutor went on. "She portrays herself as committed, religious, and faithful. But behind the scenes, the same pattern each time. A child is born, a claim is made, and she takes over. This case isn't about legacy. It's about fraud." Amara spoke at last, her words cold. They were weak men. They could not bear the future. "Kody can." The judge craned forward. "Are you confessing to targeting Mr. Brown for financial reasons?" Amara smiled with a slight curve of her lips. "I targeted destiny. The money accompanies it." The courtroom exploded. Journalists wrote frantically. Cameras outside picked up every utterance by means of live feeds and tweets. The wives stared at one another, appalled, but they were also relieved. Evidence of what they had dreaded. Kody received his face in his hands. He was finally shattered. He muttered to himself, "What have I done?" The prosecutor was not yet done. "We also have affidavits from one of her ex-partner's family. They tell us the same pattern: emotional isolation, control, sole custody claims, and fight over inheritance. This is not chance. This is a pattern of exploitation." The judge addressed Amara, his expression stern. "Do you deny these allegations?" Amara glared at him, her tone detached, rather sinister. "They were not strong enough to be worthy of me. But Kody is. He provided me with the heir. The rest is trash." Christine slapped her hand on the table. "They're not trash. They're his children." The judge's gavel rang out sharply. "Order!" He turned to look at Kody. "Mr. Brown, you signed these documents voluntarily. Did you ever doubt her history?" Kody slowly shook his head. "I didn't want to. She said she could save my legacy. and I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Robyn, in a choked whisper, said, "You gave her everything, and she almost erased us all." The judge steadied his voice. "Under these circumstances, this court will direct an independent financial examination, a protective custody assessment, and an immediate freeze on all inheritance transfers related to this child. No property, trust or estate shall be granted to Miss Collins or her child until such time as the review is finished." Amara stood up abruptly, baby clutched to her chest, anger flashing across her features. "You can freeze documents, you can hold up decisions, but he is still mine. The heir is still mine, and nothing you do will change that." The bailiff moved forward, but she did not struggle. She merely sat down again, rocking the baby with slow, deliberate motions, her smile reappearing. Kody gazed at her, as though he were gazing at a stranger. His voice shook. "Who are you?" Amara gazed at him tenderly. "I'm the woman who gave you something no other would. A future." The wives gazed at Kody, anticipation building. Would he continue to stand for her? Would he continue to hold on to the notion of legacy? Or would he finally see reality? The court adjourned for the day, but tension did not exit with the gavel. All were aware that the next hearing would determine more than custody. It would determine if the Brown name endured or terminated in scandal. The seventh session was the most eagerly awaited thus far. Journalists packed the steps outside the courthouse. Before dawn, cameras positioned in front of the courthouse doors, waiting for a glimpse of Kody Brown. Inside, the air was thick. The wives sat together this time. Christine, Janelle, Meri, and even Robyn. There wasn't a word spoken. Their bond was tentative, one of necessity rather than love. They were joined in opposition to Amara, and to the man who had given her the keys to their family's destiny. The judge appeared, his gavel falling once. "Today we will hear direct testimony from Mr. Brown himself." Kody stood up slowly, moving towards the stand like a man walking to his own funeral. He sat down, putting his hands upon the wood, and took the oath. His eyes were empty, his hair disheveled, his stance feeble. He looked small for the first time. The prosecutor opened. "Mr. Brown, do you admit signing documents that gave Amara Collins, also referred to as Amara Brown, inheritance and custodial rights over your newborn child?" Kody's voice broke. "I do." "Why?" he faltered. "Because she convinced me that I was creating something greater than myself. She said I was disappointing my heritage, that my kids did not respect me, that my wives left me, and she offered me a do-over. An heir who would never betray me." Christine shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. Janelle's fists were clenched tightly in her lap. The prosecutor continued. "Mr. Brown, do you know what those signatures would have done? They would have removed every one of your other children from legal consideration as heirs." Kody's lip quivered. "I did not want to remove them. I just wanted one child who believed in me." Christine rose to her feet, her voice cracking. "They all believed in you. They gave everything to you for years, and you discarded them for a lie." The judge told her to sit, but it was too late. The words hung in the air like an open wound. The prosecutor moved forward. "Were you aware, Mr. Brown, that Amara had a history of suing and claiming inheritance from other men?" Kody shook his head. "No, I didn't ask. I didn't want to know." "Would you have married her if you had?" He spoke softly, just above a whisper. "No." The courtroom hummed with the sound of murmurs. Amara rocked the baby, unsmiling but steadfast, her smile weak but unwavering. The prosecutor pressed on. "Do you feel Miss Collins married you for love, or for control?" Kody glanced over at Amara, then shame etched upon his face. "Control." Amara's eyes narrowed, but she did not wince. She leaned down to kiss the baby's forehead, saying something no one could possibly hear. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Brown, do you admit that by prioritizing this child above your other children, you did them emotional damage?" Kody's shoulders dropped. He nodded. "Yes." The judge leaned in. "Do you admit that you as a father failed to keep them from being emotionally manipulated?" Kody's voice cracked. "Yes." There was a collective gasp from the room. Meri hid her face behind her hands. Robyn cried silently, holding Aurora. Christine and Janelle exchanged a glance. "It's dead, Vay." Not even relief, but the fatigue of hearing finally the truth uttered. The judge referred to the record. "Let it be noted that Mr. Brown admits failure of parental responsibility in this case. The court will take this into consideration in its final decision. For the first time, Amara's mask slipped. She rose, her tone cold. You think you will win by destroying him? You won't. He is my own. The heir is mine. And when all of you are nothing but dust, this child will carry on his name. The bailiff moved forward, but the judge's voice drowned out his. Sit down, Miss Collins. She sat, but her eyes blazed. The hearing concluded in silence. No one hurried out of the courtroom. No one said a word. The only noise was the gentle cooing of the baby in Amara's arms, something that now bore the burden of an entire family's breakdown. With the gavel's fall, the judge declared, "Tomorrow, I will render my decision." And so the courtroom cleared, each of the wives leaving with slow footsteps. Kody stood back, by himself, gazing at the ground. He had acknowledged, but acknowledgement would not redeem him, now. The last day of hearings attracted more individuals than the building was able to accommodate. The hallways were dominated by reporters. Fans waited outside with placards, and the whir of cameras never ceased. It was less a custody hearing, and more the final performance of an open trial on legacy itself. Within, the courtroom was strained. The wives were seated in the front row together, their features set in a tight, unified expression. Christine clutched Janelle's hand. Meri sat stiffly, rigid, her eyes unflinching. Robyn had Aurora pressed against her shoulder. They were no longer divided women. They were mothers, united by the desire to guard their children. Kody slipped in quietly, his head down. The bravado, the arrogance, the theatrics that used to characterize him were gone. He resembled a man anticipating the verdict of his own shortcomings. And Amara, she swept in with the baby in her arms, wearing white, her chin up. She gave the cameras a faint smile before she sat, swaying the child as if the courtroom was her stage. The judge spoke. His tone was firm, measured, each word carefully selected. This has been one of the most emotionally charged cases I have ever had to preside over. It is not merely a question of custody, or inheritance, or signatures on forms. It is a question of survival, for a family and the safety of its most vulnerable members. He shifted his attention to Amara. Miss Collins, also Amara Brown, to us here. Your conduct, from past lawsuits to that in this marriage, is a calculated effort to manipulate men with promises of inheritance, and to obtain money and control of the children by coercion. This court will not see that conduct continue. Amara's smile broke. She clutched the baby closer to her chest. Both parents will have custody of the minor child, Solomon Elijah Brown. Miss Brown's other wives, Christine, Janelle, Meri and Robyn, will be given legal status as co-guardians to make sure this child does not become cut off from his siblings, or used as leverage against them. Sole custody is not granted. Documents of inheritance signed under duress are declared void. The wives exhaled all at once. Christine wept openly. Janelle squeezed her hand tighter. Robyn closed her eyes and whispered thanks under her breath. Even Meri's lips trembled with emotion. Kody covered his face with his hands. Relief mixed with shame poured from him in waves. But the judge wasn't finished. Mr. Brown, this court sees your admission of parental failure. Although you are not deprived of custody, your visit with your children outside Solomon will be supervised until a state-appointed therapist validates that your relationship is safe, healthy, and not coerced by outside influence. Kody nodded weakly. All he could do. Lastly, the judge glared at Amara for the last time. This court decides that you cannot file inheritance claims against the Brown family trust without concurrent consent of the mothers and legal representatives. If you try to play games with the law once again, you will be charged with criminal fraud and coercion. The gavel fell. The case was over. Quietness engulfed the room. Then Christine rose, her voice ringing out, strong, resonating through the courtroom. You nearly wiped them out, she addressed Amara. But you didn't. They are still present. We are still present, and you will never deprive us of that. Amara's eyes tightened, but she did not speak. She rose, shifted the baby in her arms, and moved out deliberately, the cameras trailing her every step. Kody remained. He was unable to move. His wives, his former wives, his family, what was remaining of it, passed by him in silence, not through malice, but because nothing remained to be said. The heritage he had pursued was lost, not because of Amara, not even because of the judge, but because he had not guarded what really mattered. Outside, where the reporters hounded her, Christine spun once, her tone strong and unflinching. This wasn't ever about one heir. It was about all the children, And today, they were heard. And with that, the Brown family entered a future still broken, still wounded, but at last released from the shadow of a woman who believed she could stake a dynasty in one child. Kody stayed behind, looking at the vacant courtroom. He was alone, with only the sound of a gavel, and the gravity of his own heirs.